Should you use Arcstudio Pro for your screenwriting software? Well, maybe. I mean, for some of you, Arcstudio Pro will be the ideal software to help you write. For others of you, you may choose to use it for part of your writing process, which is how I use it. More on that later. And for still others of you, it may not work for you at all. So I'm gonna lift up the hood, talk about the good and the bad as we go through getting started in the software, planning your script, the actual writing, exporting and importing, and a few other things that I think is helpful to mention. And then I'll wrap up with my recommendations. I do want to let you know though that if at any point you want to try Arcstudio Pro, and some of you will probably want to, use the link below. If you decide to purchase Arcstudio Pro, you'll get $30 off for the first year, but only if you use the link below. So if you're gonna use it, you might as well get $30 off. Just saying.
He's so fluffy, I'm gonna die!
In getting started with Arcstudio, it is available on pretty much any type of device that you have, except for systems that run Linux and Android. Otherwise, you're good. You can even download it to your system, which is what I did, to make it easily accessible. Now, Arcstudio does store your work in the cloud, so whether you access it on your computer or tablet or whatever, you'll be able to access the script, the up-to-date version of the script, which can be handy if you write on multiple devices or machines. One of the things that I like about Arcstudio is the fact that it is a clean and simple interface. There's not a lot of distractions and not a lot of tools and buttons that clutter everything up. Even the menu items don't have a long list of things. It's meant to be simple and distraction-free. You can set up all the standard things as far as formatting and preferences with some caveats, but all the standard stuff is there. So if you're wanting an industry standard formatted script, well, you're good. It's not really a surprise that Arcstudio does this, as most screenwriting software does it. Arcstudio is no different. If it didn't, that would be a problem, but you're good on this one. The few caveats and things you can't do, well, you can't use any other typeface besides Courier. For 99% of the time, though, this is perfectly fine. But here's an example from Dan Gilroy's screenplay, Nightcrawler. Yeah, you can't do this in Arcstudio, but most of you won't ever need to do anything like this, so you're probably good. You also can't finesse specific lines within your screenplay. So if you want one parenthetical to be a few characters longer, you can't do it. You can only make global changes. Again, 99% of the time, this will not be an issue. Something you can do, however, is create unique formatting elements. So let's say you're planning to use supers in your screenplay. You can set up a specific formatting element so that all those supers look exactly the same. You can even assign your newly created element a specific shortcut key to make it easier for you to use. So anything like this you're planning to do a few times in your script, this is a great tool. Keep in mind, the only drawback I found is that if you want to ultimately export your script to Final Draft or an FDX file, any other software that imports FDX files, they won't really know what to do with your uniquely created element, and it'll more than likely get treated as if it's just an action line. So you might have to do some minor formatting tweaks in the target software because it probably won't preserve that unique element. But if you aren't planning to export your script to some other software, you're just planning to create a PDF, which is the industry standard for sharing scripts, you're gonna be just fine. Just be aware if you're wanting to move it into other software. When you create a new script, there's some information you can input that is associated with that script. Now you can always change it later if you want, but this lets you set some parameters specific to that individual script if you want them. Keep in mind, the free version of Arcstudio only allows you to have 2 scripts in the software. If you have the paid version, you can have as many as you want. You can also choose your display preferences, day or night mode, whether or not you want the shortcuts to pop up or to live along the bottom of the screen, and a couple of other preferences. But once you get your preferences all set, now you're ready to begin planning your screenplay, and this is where, in my opinion, Arcstudio Pro shines. I recently did a video about using a beat sheet to plan a screenplay, and I used Arcstudio's plot board to do that for a script that I'm currently working on. So I'm not going to rehash all of that content here, but you can check out that video if you want, and I'll link it to the end of this video. Let me summarize though by saying the plot board itself is a great tool, especially if you plan your script using beat sheets or even a treatment, or a standard outline. You can modify the elements of the plot board to suit your taste, or even create your own templates if you want to do that. I did bump into a couple of little issues that are just more like interface issues, like moving acts or chunks of scenes to the very beginning or the very end of the plot board. It won't really let you do that easily. So you kind of just have to work around it. And what I did, I just made a beginning and an ending group, and they just kind of stayed parked there at the beginning and the end, and then I could just move everything else in between. Everything in the middle moves really easily. This is just a minor thing. It's easy to get around, but I did have that. Within the plot board itself, you can name characters and assign them colors to help you quickly visualize which characters are associated with each beat or each scene. You can identify subplots and assign beats to specific subplots and visually see them as well. You can rearrange everything to get it like you want, and you can add as much detail as you want. And all of this starts to bake into your screenplay. So when I finished the plot board for the script I was working on, I could jump into the script itself, and with the navigation tool, quickly see all of my scenes, beats, a summary of what was going on, and any information I'd recorded. And if you want to move things around, you can do that within the plot board, and it moves them around in your script, or you can move things around in the navigation tool itself. Personally, I really like the plot board, and this is truly my favorite part of Arcstudio Pro and why I've incorporated it into my software toolkit. It's great for planning and for getting that first draft down, and for me, it works fantastically. That brings us to the writing. And as far as the actual writing, the interface is helpful, and you can specify what happens at what point. So you're typing along, you hit return on your keyboard at the end of a line of action. What happens next? Do you go to another action line, a character name, a scene heading? And you can set this for each element, which is a great feature that not all screenwriting software packages have. Arcstudio also auto-saves your work, so you don't have to worry about losing a segment because you forgot to save, which I know some of you have had happen. Or you're working on a script, it's late at night, and you spill a glass of milk all over your keyboard. Yep, I did that one. Lost a bunch of stuff with that. So the autosave feature is great. But Jake, you say, what if I want to go back to a previous version? If I never have to save, how can I find a previous iteration of my script? Well, if you tend to write where you like to go back to previous versions, you can simply do a save as draft, and that will let you save that current version as its own thing. But another tool you have at your disposal to help with this, which I think is unique to Arcstudio, is a tool called the Stash. Now the Stash lets you copy a section of your script and store it in the Stash for later. So say you have a great line of dialogue that you want to keep, but it doesn't fit in the scene that you just wrote it in. That's fine. Just save that line or lines into your Stash, and then when you want to use them, go back to your Stash and find them and bring them into your script. No more copying and pasting at the end of your screenplay. That's what I used to do. I would take a section I really liked, I just copy and paste at the end, and then I have to scroll through pages of stuff at the end of my screenplay just to find the thing I was looking for. With the Stash, it just stays in there. And if you want to use it, all you got to do is just drag and drop it back into your script where you want it. You can also make comments or notes to yourself along the way, and if you're collaborating with others, I'll get to collaboration in a second, they can also make comments or notes about the script. A few things related to the actual writing that I need to mention. If you're in dark mode, the highlighting tool is kinda non-functional as I record this. The only color that works is purple, the darkest purple shade, because all the other colors are light, and when you have a light highlighter and a white text, the text is washed out. Now, I do know they're working on this feature because I submitted the problem and they contacted me about it. Perhaps by the time you're watching this, that problem has been resolved. For me, this is an issue because I use different highlighter colors to help me track and keep track of the things that I need to address in the script. But I like dark mode because it's easier on my eyes, so I opt for dark mode and then just kind of have to deal with the highlighting issue. One other issue that popped up for me was there was some weird things happening with the auto populate tool when I was writing my script. It wasn't too bad, but it was aggravating because it kind of just wasn't working like it should. I contacted support about this issue also, and they got back to me. I showed them a screen recording of the problem, and in the most recent update, as I record this video, I'm happy to report that that issue has been resolved. Auto-populate works great now. And the reason I mention this is I've only run across a few software companies that solicit feedback to make their software better and then actually implement it. And Arcstudio Arcstudio is one of these rare gems. So if you have a feature request or if you run into problems, just submit a ticket through their help desk and they will put it in their queue to work on. Now keep in mind that some issues are simpler to fix than others. They're probably not going to get to your issue overnight, but I really appreciated Arcstudio communicating with me on these issues. So a shout out to the tech team and to Amanda in support. But what you can't do on Arcstudio's help desk site is hit like and subscribe if you're finding value from this video. You can also drop a comment below about what you like about Arcstudio or your experience with it if you have some. And again, Arcstudio may not be for you, and that's cool, but it might be for someone else. So sharing your experience with it, if you have some, is helpful. And if you don't know what else to write in the comments, just write Amanda is awesome. And don't forget about the link below for $30 off Arcstudio Pro if you decide to purchase it. But you're done with the script and now you have to export it.
I am a master of Kung Fu.
And the primary way you're going to export things is to create a PDF. And this is the industry standard regardless of what anyone else tells you. And most of the time you're submitting a script, you're going to be submitting a PDF. And in Arcstudio, in addition to exporting a PDF, you can export a fountain file or a final draft file. And if you're using any other screenwriting software in your process, nearly all of them import a PDF or a fountain file or an FDX file. So you're pretty much all set no matter how else anyone requests your script or how you intend to use your script. Keep in mind that not everything will transfer smoothly if you've made some alterations to the margins or added some custom elements. If you're using only the standard elements, it's going to transfer just fine. But any transfer from one software to another is always going to have some minor things that you're going to have to clean up after the transfer.
Kevin.
The title page itself is easy to create and format within Arcstudio, and there's even a placeholder if you want to add an image. But let's say you have a script in some other software and you want to put it in Arcstudio. Arcstudio will import an FDX file, a fountain file, a PDF, and even a Word document. Again, you're going to have to make some adjustments, but not having to retype the script is a big time saver. Probably the biggest takeaway from the importing exporting tools, and not just with Arcstudio, but with any screenwriting software, is make sure you know what you're going to do with the script for the entire process. Because if you know, you'll be able to make better decisions all along the way. So for example, you're going to take your Arcstudio script, export it to an FDX file so you can import it into another screenwriting software program. You probably won't want to create any custom formatting elements in Arcstudio, as those are going to get a little wonky in all those transfers. But if you're going to write your whole script in Arcstudio, then make whatever custom elements and changes you want to make. Totally do it. Now let me briefly mention a few of the other features of Arcstudio, and then I'll give you my thoughts and recommendations. Collaboration tools are rolled into Arcstudio, and this feature is primarily for professional writers on TV shows, as usually more than one person is working on a script. And those of you familiar with the show Arcane, it was written using Arcstudio Pro. And there are regular updates to the collaboration tools and accessibility features by Arcstudio in their regular updates. So if you're collaborating with other writers, you might find these collaboration tools helpful. But most screenwriters are not working on an active TV show, and they won't normally use these features. But for some of you, knowing that they're there might be helpful for you. Another thing to mention is the talking element, for lack of a better description. Either talk to text or having the software read what you've written. As far as the talk to text, it does have that functionality. You have to set up your software, give appropriate permissions for your computer and all that stuff, but you can talk and it'll type. As far as reading back what you've written, it doesn't have that feature. That feature has been requested though, and if Arcstudio gets enough requests and upvotes for it, I'm sure they'll explore adding it down the road. Arcstudio also has some buttons that will make the screen distraction free, which is great. Again, one of the things I like about Arcstudio is the clean interface, and you can make it even cleaner and eliminate everything but the script or the navigation tool if you're using that, if you want to do that. You can also set up timed writing. A timer with multiple time options is available, and it's supposed to get your attention if you don't write for a few minutes, but I couldn't trigger the nag you part of it on the 10-minute timer, but this isn't really a tool I'd use, and if I wanted to, I've just got a timer on my phone, so no biggie. But the thing is, for me, timers stress me out. I don't really want that when I'm writing anyway. But if you want a timer, it is there. Still, making the whole interface, the whole screen distraction-free is a great feature, especially if you're easily distracted.
He is a good and smart master, and he made me this collar so that I may talk. Squirrel!
I used Arcstudio Pro for the whole process of outlining a script and then writing a first draft, and I'm currently going back and making some big overhaul adjustments to my story and my character arcs. So let me give you my recommendations for Arcstudio Pro, and I mentioned this earlier, but I don't think it's for everyone. It might be for you though.
Wait! I haven't told you what it is yet.
And for some context, I do want to mention a few considerations about screenwriting software really quickly, 4 of them. 1, software should help you tell the story you want to tell. It's a tool, and you should use the one best suited for you and your style of writing. Arcstudio Pro might tick this box for you, and I'll give you some examples for how it might help you or not here in a second. Number 2, software should be intuitive and easy to use. You shouldn't be having to think about what buttons to push to do something. Instead, just do it. And Arcstudio Pro does tick this box. 3, software is an investment. If you're serious about the craft, you're gonna be buying some software at some point. What you don't want is to have to continuously pay for updates or new versions, things like that, like some other screenwriting software out there. Your active subscription to Arcstudio ticks this box too, and all updates and new versions are included in your subscription price, so there's no extra out-of-pocket expenses for you. And last, screenwriting software should not get in the way of doing the craft. Some screenwriting software just has too many tools that you don't need that's already baked into the software itself, and it's honestly a waste of your money buying that software, and it takes you away from what you should be doing, writing. Arcstudio Pro ticks this box in that there are not a lot of unneeded tools in the software, and you're able to do what you need to do if you are like most writers. Okay, so is Arcstudio Pro for you? Well, if the script you're writing has all standard formatting things, so you aren't pulling a Dan Gilroy and Nightcrawler kind of thing, you can use Arcstudio for the entire scripting process. Planning, scripting, finishing, exporting, you're gonna be solid. And here are the factors that would make you choose Arcstudio over other screenwriting software. The plot board and planning tools, okay, that's top of the list. These are great and customizable and a great, fantastic way to digitize your planning. Distraction-free design. The integration of the navigator tool and the distraction-free element is great. Updates are regular and free. Arcstudio Pro is a subscription-based software package, so while using it, all the updates, all the new versions, everything's all free. So if these things appeal to you and you're writing scripts of this nature, you might want to consider Arcstudio over some other, much more expensive screenwriting software packages. But you might also want to consider Arcstudio Pro if you're like me. And here's how I use it. I use the planning tools to plan out my story and for my initial revising of my script. So I'm planning out the story, I'm writing my first draft, and my initial big revisions where I'm still referencing my outline. That way I can still make adjustments to my outline and get my story working. The navigation and the notes and the integration of the script, all of that all together really works for me and my process. And honestly, once the highlighting colors get fixed in the dark mode, this will be like a great, super fantastic tool for me. However, I almost always tend to finesse things in later drafts, a la Dan Gilroy. So for later drafts, I'll end up using this other software package I use, which for me is Fade In. But for my planning and initial drafts, Arcstudio Pro is fantastic. And full disclosure, I am not usually a fan of subscription-based software, but let's face it, most software works this way in today's world. But Arcstudio is fairly affordable, especially with the $30 off for the first year link below. And for me, the planning tools make it worth the price of admission. But if you're a screenwriter who doesn't like to plan your stories ahead of time and you just want to start writing, okay, Arcstudio Pro is not for you. The free version maybe, or some other free screenwriting software, but you don't need any tools that Arcstudio has to offer, and it'd be a waste of your money. Or if you're a screenwriter who likes to plan out your story, but only in written form, and then you begin writing, and you also like to finesse and fine-tune small pieces of your script, maybe using a different typeface here or there, if that's you, Okay, Arcstudio Pro isn't for you either. You need something with a few more finessing features. Now, that doesn't mean that at some point in the future, Arcstudio won't modify this and allow you to make some smaller tweaks, but for now, if this is you as a screenwriter, you should pass on Arcstudio Pro. But if you're like most screenwriters and you use standard formatting throughout and you want the benefit of the planning tools, whether you're going to use Arcstudio to write only your first couple of drafts or to write all of your drafts, just click the link below, save $30 on your first year, and start working on your script already. I mentioned earlier that I made a video about using the plot board specifically for planning out your story using a beat sheet model. And if you want to watch that, click here. Otherwise, fun buttons below, comment about what was helpful, and whatever software you use to tell a story that matters. See you later.